Today was a very sad wake-up call for me. It's the first time I realized that I can no longer button up my favorite pair of pants. Now I know my brain went to all of the other sources of blame, the dryer working a little too hard to shrink those pants, but when it comes down to it, ultimately it's me, it's my decisions over the past few months. In the middle of this pandemic, a lot of us are dealing with so much stress, and we are having all sorts of different approaches to how to deal with or cope with that stress. For me, one of my main coping mechanisms was food. Not good food, junk food. Junk food tastes delicious. I mean, I love bacon, I love chocolate. I love chocolate on bacon. But the challenge is in the short term, it might help us feel better, but in the long term, it doesn't do good for our bodies, our brains, and our well-being. Now, I'm not here to give you tips, strategies on your true dietary habits, but instead give you some insights into other self-care habits that on the surface might feel like they're helping us, but in the long run, they are truly self-care junk food. Let's start with one of the main things that we do to distract when we are dealing with a stressor, and that is hop on our phones, hop on the computer, and start perusing social media. Now sure, there are all sorts of funny videos out there of cats and funny people and people who don't know that they look like cats.
I'm here live, I'm not a cat.
But we have to understand a critical concept called emotional contagion. A few years ago, Facebook got in some hot water. And I know, surprising, how could they? What they had done is they had manipulated news feeds of thousands of individuals without their consent. Individuals were randomly selected to either be exposed to more positive posts from friends and other random ads, or more negative or unpleasant posts. Then researchers and Facebook tracked the results. What they found was that if you're exposed to more positive posts, you were more likely to post positive things. And on the flip side, if you were more exposed to negative content, you were more likely to then post further negative content. And I don't know if you've been on Facebook in a while, but a lot of the information out there isn't necessarily positive. Now this idea that what we're exposed to, what we consume with media impacts us, it's about more than just us. Researchers Christakis and Fowler did a massive study on social networks, and what they found is that our emotions can be contagious up to 3 degrees. Case in point, let's imagine that your neighbor is generally a happy person. Just by knowing and interacting with your neighbor who's happy, you have a 15% increased likelihood of happiness. Now you go home to your families, your children, your kids, because they know you and you interacted with the neighbor, they have a 10% increased likelihood of happiness. They go to school, their friends, their teachers have a 5% increased likelihood of happiness. Now you might be thinking in your mind, 5, 10, 15%, that's not that much, Chase Mielke, but consider if you have $10,000 more than your neighbor, you only have a 2% increased likelihood of happiness. In other words, being exposed to either pleasant or unpleasant experiences, pleasant or unpleasant people, can have a huge impact not only on our well-being, but the people we associate with as well. So should you drop Facebook entirely? Maybe. Now, even though you might not be ready to quit or delete your social media entirely, consider, could you use a 1-month social media cleanse, just getting away from the potential negativity that gets posted over and over out there? Another very common type of self-care junk food is venting. I know you might be thinking, oh my gosh, I have all of this angst, all this anger, I'm upset, I'm frustrated, I need to do something with it, otherwise I'm going to drive myself crazy. So I'm going to vent it out with others. Here's the challenge with venting. Research on venting, which is often called co-rumination, has revealed that at its best, it doesn't increase our well-being. And at worst, there is data out there that co-rumination can make us feel worse. When we are stressed and we feel the need to converse about it or talk it out, what we're really seeking are 2 things. First, we want connection. We want to know that we aren't alone. And this is actually satisfied by venting. If I vent, if I ruminate with someone else and they can agree and nod, I feel a bond with that individual. We are going through the challenges together. However, the other thing that we crave and need is perspective. We need to shift our thinking to pull ourselves out of that stress and anguish. This is the element that venting does not achieve. Very infrequently through venting do we get a new perspective, new outlook, new optimism on the situation. So you might not be ready to quit social media entirely. You might not be ready to quit venting entirely. So how do we get more practical? We do that by making sure we are checking our process to progress ratio. Process means share the vent, share the anguish, share the frustration, get the connection piece with someone else, but then shift into progress mode. How do I talk through solutions? How do I invite the other person to help me change my thinking or look at it from a different lens? Try to aim for at least a 30 to 70% ratio. So if you have 10 minutes to vent it out with someone, take 3 of those minutes and actually vent it out. 7 minutes of that time, try to think of what are you going to do. Even if it's something beyond your control, what are the strategies you can use to try to persevere even in difficult circumstances? So take a moment to reflect for yourself. Is your self-care far more of junk food than fulfilling? Do you really need to vent it out when you could shift your perspective? Do you really need to scroll through social media to get some outlet when there are far healthier ways to do that? Do you really need bacon covered in chocolate right now? Is it going to contribute to long-term well-being and long-term happiness?